There are several ways to capture enemy pieces in a strategic board game. And then there are games which use a combination of these different capturing methods, like this one does. Like my head is spinning. So now that that's out of the way, let's have ourselves a little geography lesson. The Republic of the Union of Myanmar is a country in Southeast Asia. It is also known as Burma, which was its official name until 1989, and has a population of about 55 million. And its largest city is Yangon, formerly called Rangoon. Here they play a traditional board game called Mak-Yek. A neighbor hereabouts is called Thailand, officially the Kingdom of Thailand, and historically known as Siam. In 2019, Thailand had almost 40 million international tourists, ahead of the UK and Germany. They have a population of about 70 million, and the largest city is Bangkok. In Thailand, they also play Mak-Yek. Next door is Malaysia, a federal constitutional monarchy, separated by the South China Sea into two regions, Peninsula Malaysia and Borneo's East Malaysia. The population is around 57 million. Kuala Lumpur is the national capital and the country's largest city. Here they play a traditional game called Apit-Sodok. Now this is almost the same game. There are differences, and I will point those out at the end of the animation sequence. There are several ways to capture enemy pieces in a strategic board game. The most common is a jump, as in the game of checkers or drafts. Next is displacement, which is done like in chess, for example. Another is approach, in which your attacking piece lands in a space adjacent to the piece that you are capturing in the direction that you moved. Then there is withdrawal, and that is the opposite of approach, in which you are next to that piece already and you move away from it, then you capture it. Both of these moves are used in the game of Fanorona. And then there's push. Push is used in abalone in particular, but also in Arama'a, in which you push an enemy piece either into a trap or off the board. Conflict resolution. Conflict resolution is when you approach an enemy piece and you have to resolve the conflict to see who actually wins that space. And that is like in Stratego or at Risk, that type of thing. Custodial, which is one of my favorites, in which a enemy piece is trapped between two of the attacking pieces, sometimes more than two. And intervention is another interesting one, kind of the corollary to custodial capture, wherein if an attacking piece moves between two target pieces, it captures both of those. The game may first have been described to European audiences by Captain James Lowe in 1839. He was a contributing writer to a publication that had this intimidating title: Asiatic Researches, or Transactions of the Society instituted in Bengal for inquiring into the history, the antiquities, the arts and sciences, and literature of Asia. Second part of the 20th volume. Whew, they did love their book titles back then. Another early description of the game was by H.J.R. Murray in 1913 in his famous book, The History of Chess. The name is often mentioned in chess circles just because it's played on a chessboard. There's really nothing else that's similar to chess at all about Mak-Yek. And as usual, there are several different ways to play the game. There are regional variations, temporal variations, and so on. I found a set of rules on the internet which are playable, and it was on the internet, so it must be true, right? So, at any rate, let's give it a try. The game is played on a board of 8 by 8 squares, and each player has 2 rows of pieces set up on their nearest row and on the third row from the edge. All pieces move like chess rooks. that is, in a straight line, orthogonally as far as they can, or as far as the player wishes, until they reach another piece or the edge of the board. So far, so good. Let's set some pieces up here to demonstrate a couple moves and the results of those moves. The objective of Mak-Yek is pretty typical. Capture all the enemy pieces. This is accomplished by two methods. A. Custodial capture. I've described this one in other videos, and it's really more common than most people think. If an enemy piece is surrounded on two sides, it is captured and immediately removed from the board. B. Capture by intervention. This one is a little less common. When a piece moves between two enemy pieces, the two on either side are captured and removed immediately. The custodial capture can take more than one enemy piece per turn. Here's a multiple capture with the custodial method. And here's another. There is the possibility that the capturing player will have to make a decision. In a case like this, the move can capture by intervention or by custodial capture. The player must choose which method to use during this turn. Now, the rules I've found don't specify anything about the edge of the board being involved in these captures, so I assume it's not. And likewise, I assume that a piece in a corner is safe from custodial capture. These captures go on, as most games of annihilation will, until one player has no pieces left. They would be the loser. Or, if a player cannot make a legal move, they would also be the loser. Now here are the differences between Mak-Yek and Apit-Sodok. The board is the same, the look is the same, and the movement is the same. The difference is in the implementation of custodial capture. In Mak-Yek and most other games that use this capture method, the move can only capture one piece. But in Apit-Sodok, the custodial capture can take a row of pieces all at once. In this example, this black piece has several choices of capture. This move would capture these two white pieces by intervention. This move would capture these three white pieces by custodial capture. Then there's the ultimate combo. One capture by custodial method and another by intervention at the same time. No choice is necessary in Apit-Sodok. Take them all. Now, I didn't find anything particular about the game's history before the early 1800s. It's doubtful that it sprang into life fully grown all of a sudden overnight there. It probably has a longer history than that, but I couldn't find any evidence of it. Common games just weren't written down. If the king or the queen or the emperor or the priest took a liking to it, then they probably would have had some written record of the game. But in this case, there's basically nothing. The archaeological record doesn't really help either. So many games, especially in Southeast Asia and India, were played on an 8x8 grid. Finding very, very old examples of 8x8 boards and pieces, it doesn't really tell anything about what was being played on those boards, even if the squares are marked, because they used a lot of the same boards for different games. So archaeology doesn't help us out much either. Now, I saw a video the other day on YouTube that had a game on there being played that looked like Mak-Yek. It was set up the same way on an 8x8 board, had the same combination of custodial and intervention captures going on, but they didn't capture. It actually reversed what would normally be captured pieces to the opposite color, somewhat like Othello or Reversi or Gundru, and it was pretty chaotic looking, but it also looked very intriguing. I have no idea what the game was, but I'm going to have to do some more research because that sounded pretty neat. And I could see how it likely could be sort of overwhelming with all those moves going on and no pieces coming off the board. So stand by for that. So this is my Mak-Yek board. The board and the pieces might look familiar. I've used this 8x8 board for a lot of other games too, And these are just wooden checkers, nothing fancy there. It's fairly easy to put together a set of your own. Just find a couple of dollar store checkerboards and pieces, and you can set up a game of Mak-Yek. There is one more game played that looks a lot like Mak-Yek that's played in Cambodia, and it's called Rek, R-E-K. The biggest difference between Mak-Yek and Rek is that one of the pieces in Rek is actually the king, and capturing that king is how you win the game. Another good way to play a variant of Mak-Yek. So I encourage you to do so and then share the results with us here in the comments section. And if you do know anything more about the history of Mak-Yek, by all means let us know. It's always good to share whatever archaeological knowledge somebody might have about the lineage of some of these more obscure games. And so, as usual, I want to thank you very much for your support, for your subscription and your like buttons and your notifications and all that. Really appreciate you being here and sharing information, comments, and questions with us. And of course, I always leave with the same parting words because I really believe it's good for you. Be sure to play every day.